The insert place name here athletics are seemingly hurtling towards a potential contraction, a dirty word not uttered in baseball circles since ill-fated attempts to remove the Minnesota Twins and Montreal Expos some 2 decades previously. These rosters already been stripped for parts and sold, any usable infrastructure is being gutted and outsourced to the Sacramento Kings and Rivercat staff. The team is basically one of those car frames on blocks you see driving through Rio Linda on any given day. Everyone is lining up to buy the Oakland Athletics as the team's proposed Las Vegas stadium feels less realistic by the hour. Joe Lacob, Vivek Ranadive, mystery buyers. Hell, I hear this guy even has an offer lined up for the team.
You want to trade me an undershirt?
No, I want to trade you screen legend Anthony Quinn's undershirt.
And while everyone on the baseball hierarchy, from the commissioner to the owners, down to the players and even us lowly fans want Fisher to sell the team, there is a catch. The flip tax. Ah, yes, the flip tax. It's become sort of a forgotten footnote in this saga that is nearly a year old now. A saga that seems no closer to being solved today than it was all the way back in April of 2023 when news first broke. Seriously, how are we no closer to a resolution on this one way or the other? The past 12 months have been spent by all of these players involved backing themselves into a corner, and now there's no real workable solution available. We are watching a scratch game of tic-tac-toe play out before our very eyes. Let's start any potential discussion of an Oakland A's contraction with the flip tax. According to Bob Nightingale of USA Today, if Fisher sells the A's before 2028, he is taxed 20% of the purchase price. That falls to 10% in 2029 and decreases into the single digits between 2030 and 2033 before finally expiring. The existence of the flip tax provisions means basically one of two things needs to happen in order to facilitate a potential sale of the Oakland Athletics by John Fisher. The first one is that the MLB simply waives the flip tax, and while on the surface this may seem plausible, I just don't see it that way. That's because it is really difficult to see MLB owners passing up on found money. Given how these owners have already bent over backwards to accommodate Fisher's potential proposed relocation to Las Vegas, including giving up a relocation fee, why would they waive the flip tax and give up money that is really just at no cost to them? We also know Manfred doesn't seem to care about bad publicity, so there will be little pressure for the league or its owners to cave on waiving the flip tax should Fisher wish to sell. The second thing that could happen is that a buyer for the A's could agree to pay overs, essentially covering the flip tax for John Fisher. Again, this on the surface does seem reasonable, but I think when you root around in the idea, it becomes less and less likely. The real problem here is that if a potential new ownership group is willing to pay $1.5 billion or whatever in 2028, Fisher could just wait a few extra years and pocket more of the money himself. There is no incentive for Fisher to relinquish ownership of the Oakland Athletics anytime this decade. Similarly for the owners, why give up the flip tax? They don't have a reason to do so. That of course negatively impacts potential new ownership groups in Oakland, Sacramento, or anywhere else who can't get started on a new stadium without a team in hand. The timeline for these places to get new stadiums built, to get ready for the Oakland A's, just gets pushed back further and further as they wait for Fisher to make a decision on if he's going to sell or not, and he's not going to make that decision until he doesn't have to pay a tax on the team being sold. This is also why an Arizona Coyote situation where MLB buys the team from Fisher and then sells it to a new owner while pocketing a premium is unlikely. There's nothing baseball can offer Fisher that makes this worthwhile to him, that makes this a palatable solution for Fisher. Is he really going to be interested in receiving the rights to a potential expansion franchise down the track in order to take a $2 million haircut? I just think that's doubtful. Thus, we have a stalemate on our hands. Of course, Fisher could move the A's to Las Vegas as he's planning to do, but he doesn't seem to have the funds to get the stadium built down there, nor does anyone in Vegas seem all that willing to help partner him on a potential project. Some have pointed to Bali's struggles and willingness to give up the Tropicana as good news for the A's. However, what if the group that takes on the lease of that plot isn't so keen to build a stadium. Let's be honest, a sports themed resort is a very narrow focus and is going to come with a pretty low RevPAR, all things considered. I'm guessing there are a lot of developers who would prefer to have that plot without a stadium attached to it. Again though, just food for thought. As stated earlier, I believe MLB is probably hunkered down on its flip tax stance. There is no real reason for the league to not insist Fisher pay this. With these factors being as they are, the most likely scenario to play out as it stands right here today is that Fisher just keeps the team in this baseball purgatory until it makes financial sense for him to cash out. There is, however, one way out for both Major League Baseball and John Fisher when you take a step back, when you look at the landscape of how everything is played out and how it may play out in the future. There's one solution that makes sense. Well, it makes sense for Fisher and MLB. Everyone else involved, players, fans, just those parties, those who are the most important to the sport of baseball, they get kind of screwed here. But then again, Rob Manfred doesn't care about screwing fans. That solution is contraction. Contracting the A's gives Fisher the money he wants while arming Major League Baseball with a third expansion franchise it can extract a fee from. For Fisher, the benefit here is clear. He gets an above market rate for his franchise without needing to pay the flip tax or spending money on a new stadium. Realistically speaking, if Manfred and the other owners offered him $1.5 billion for the A's right now, I'm guessing he takes it. It's the easiest way out, it's the most lucrative way out, and we know Fisher's all about doing what's easy. For those running MLB, they can scrap the A's and then turn around and sell someone an expansion team for $2 billion. In this scenario, they end up making more than they would have either by collecting an expansion fee or through the flip tax. We also know those running baseball, Rob Manfred and company, have no issue killing off tradition, ruining history. They kind of take joy in it, it seems like. Hell, Manfred would probably take delight in being the one who kills off the A's brand once and for all. Beyond that, we know there are at least 3 groups out there, probably more than 3 groups in the United States and Canada, I suppose, willing to pay $2 billion, potentially more, for an expansion team in Major League Baseball. In this scenario, everyone, at least on the league side of things, gets exactly what they want as far as money is concerned, as far as the solution is concerned, as far as just unburdening themselves of a huge headache. It is, of course, a headache they contrived to create for themselves in the first place. The worst thing here, though, is, of course, getting rid of a team, of a franchise with such a storied history that's been a part of baseball for such a long time. We constantly hear about baseball being America's pastime, and yet nothing is done to preserve its past from Major League Baseball, the owners, Rob Manfred, all of that stuff. So seeing the A's not being part of the sports landscape, it would be an absolute travesty, but one that I'm pretty sure no one in the sport actually cares about. What really worries me about all of this, why I believe contraction is not only a potential solution, but probably the most viable one for all parties involved, is that every other proposal, every other idea involves either Major League Baseball or John Fisher making a huge concession as it relates to money. Good luck to anyone waiting on MLB or Fisher to do the right thing on the financial front. These are people who would push their kids in front of a moving bus for a quarter. Some out there will point to the fact that the Expos were never contracted as a potential reason why baseball may not pursue this option. But it's really important to note here that the situation between the Expos and the A's are entirely different. Plans involving the Expos called for the league to remove 2 teams, as this was the only way to make MLB's schedule work out. When the Twins were able to successfully block contraction, MLB really didn't have any other choice but to keep the Expos around. An odd number of teams just creates an absolute nightmare schedule that goes on far too long than baseball wants its schedule to go on. In the next few years, though, MLB can really sort of just chart out everything to work perfectly for it. It can plan the Oakland A's contraction in line with a new team coming in to Major League Baseball. So the A's come out and then a new team just slots in, replacing them essentially. And then over the next few years, they just add teams 31 and 32 at the same time. No fuss there. There is also no one around to fight a potential contraction of the Athletics Baseball Club. The Twins were forced to oblige by their Metrodome lease. That is why they had to stick around. The A's are playing in a temporary stadium for the next 3 seasons. There's no long-term lease, no one to fight on their behalf, and no one to say you have to abide by these terms. No lawsuits, no mess here. They could go away after whatever agreement with Sacramento expires, and that would be that. It would be game over. There is more to it than that. When you look at the athletics organization as a whole, there really isn't a lot worth salvaging. I mean, Fisher has done his damnedest trying to devalue the entire thing, trying to strip away anything that would be deemed of worth by a potential new owner. The A's are being run at the bare as minimum. A new owner is basically starting from scratch anyway. There's just so much that team needs, that organization needs. You're really building it up from the ground up anyway. So in many cases, new owners would probably be more interested in an expansion team than having to deal with cleaning up the mess Fisher has left behind with the A's. With the flip tax in place to discourage Fisher from selling to a new owner by himself, MLB can work with him. They can collude together on price. And then those running Major League Baseball, well, they can put the kibosh on the A's. They have that new expansion team, and they get a pick. They get a hand pick the owner they want to join their snooty little club. That's probably bad news for someone like Joe Lacob, who would be feared in baseball circles as someone willing to both spend money and finance his own stadiums without public support. You have all of these people lining up to buy the Athletics right now, and honestly, it just seems like a fool's errand. We have learned that those running Major League Baseball and the owners of the sport care about one thing and one thing only, that being money. And the way for them to make the most money is to just buy the A's from Fisher directly, contract them, and then sell an expansion franchise to a new ownership group. Heck, for the right price, Manfred may even be willing to include the A's logo and branding in any potential expansion deal. As wild and as crazy as contracting the Oakland A's may sound on the surface, is it any more preposterous than building the second coming of the Sydney Opera House and then having the team play on the Las Vegas Strip? I think not. Thank you though for watching this video. If you'd like to know a little bit more about the size of that potential Las Vegas stadium and what stadium shares a similar land plot to it, well, check out the video in the upper right hand corner of your screen. And to learn a little bit more about why Vivek Ranadive is getting played by Fisher, video lower right hand corner of your screen is the place to go. Till next time, I am Cheyenne Hollis. This is the Touchback, hashtag sell the team, hashtag sell the team, hashtag take it out to the 25.